Welcome to Extracurricular. I am your co-host, Eddie Geller.
And I am your other co-host, Stephanie Vanos. Am I a member of the Orange County School Board? Yes, I am, but I am here unofficially today and always.
I think people can hear me giggle a little bit because I'm never sure what exactly you're going to do to try and mess with me at the top of the show.
Your expression of anticipation, like, what is she going to do? Is she going to say it? Is she not? How is she going to say it? Is she going to zig? Is she going to zag?
Have you ever considered starting the show? Do you feel like that's not your purview? You're not allowed to be the person who does the welcome to extracurricular.
Well, I feel like when I hear welcome to extracurricular, that gets me in the zone.
Oh, okay. So, all right, that's fine. I'm happy to take on that role and to continue doing that role if that puts you in the zone.
It puts me in the zone.
Thank you, everyone, for listening to the pod. Welcome if you're a first-time listener. If you are listening for the first time, or maybe you've listened to a couple times and you're not subscribed, please do consider subscribing and also rating us. Steph, how many stars should they rate us if they do rate us?
There's one option, and it's 5 stars.
We do realize that technically there are more options than 5 stars, but morally, there is only one option, and that option is 5 stars.
You got it.
And also, we're on Instagram, extracurricular_podcast. You can also email us, podcastextracurricular@gmail.com. If you have thoughts about our openings, or if you know something about astronomy and you want to talk about stars, we're open to it.
Have you been checking the emails, by the way?
The emails are being checked. They're forwarded to my account. So I do see them, and I'm keeping tabs on them. And thank you for folks who have emailed in. We do appreciate your kind words.
For sure.
It's been a lot this week. You know, it's like every week is a lot, but like this week was just like an extra lot. Just when you think your psyche can't take more, the news keeps piling on.
What hit you the hardest this week?
Well, I mean, I think for most folks, like the cancellation of Jimmy Kimmel was sort of the apex. And we're going to talk more about Jimmy Kimmel today. And the free speech violations, I think that's like very much on top of mind. But yeah, it's just like another check mark in the, like, we're living in like authoritarian times. So yeah, that was a lot. What about you?
Well, yeah, and it's just wild how people respond by like complying. I don't know. I know we're going to get into it more, but it's people. I don't know if they're not as worked up as they should be, or they just think this is what we do now. I don't know. I'm worried.
Yeah. Well, I'm worried too, but I've been worried. So, I mean, I think when Colbert was canceled, like it was pretty close to the same thing. It just wasn't as explicit as this was, but we'll get into all that. So yeah, it's just been a lot. Also, you know, couldn't decide what to have for breakfast this morning and then defaulted to oatmeal. That took a lot of emotional energy, but the oatmeal was very good.
It was delicious. It always is. So what about this week? We had some travel.
It was a big week for us, but really a big week for you. Do you want to talk about why you were in DC and why I followed you along?
Yes, I was invited last Friday to provide testimony at one of the House subcommittees. It was the Economic Growth, Energy Policy, and Regulatory Affairs Subcommittee, part of the House Oversight Committee.
And this is the United States House of Representatives, correct?
Correct.
This is not somebody's house who has some committees.
Correct. Yeah, it was very, very exciting. Our local congressman, Maxwell Frost, is
former guest of the show.
True, is the ranking member on that subcommittee. And so, so the purpose of the subcommittee was sort of to discuss preparation for just the workforce that is happening with our K-12 students, and then also was talking about what some people refer to as school choice. I will say taxpayer-funded vouchers and charter school proliferation that we see happening at the state and national level. So I was asked to provide testimony. So I had an opportunity to speak for 5 minutes. Each member was able to ask questions for 5 minutes, and then I also provided some written testimony.
That's great. I mean, that must have been stressful, Eddie says as he pretends like he doesn't know.
It was very exciting, and I'm so glad that they asked. But I had kind of previously booked my weekend up with different commitments and events, and so I will say I was a little nervous, a little frazzled getting everything ready because, of course, you have this great opportunity, you want to make the best impression and give it your all. So it was a little nerve-wracking, but it was also very exciting and super fun.
I thought you did such a fantastic job, and if you check out Vote Vanish, your Instagram account, you can see a snippet of those clips. We also made a come with me while I get ready to do a congressional testimony video that was fun that I think should also be up at this point. So wait, Congressman Maxwell Frost asked you to participate. Are you and Congressman Frost, like, are you buddy-buddy? Are you guys like playing Mario Kart together, or like what's happening?
No, but he was one of the few people he was one of the many people, I guess, who asked me to originally run for school board. A group I was with had invited him to speak at a public education event. He spoke, and then I spoke after him, which is always super unfair to ever have to speak after Congressman Frost because he's just such a gifted speaker. But after that event, he called me and said, you know what, you should consider running for school board. And there were many others who asked me as well. But yeah, he was definitely one of those. And I will say we don't play Mario Kart, but he did make me a coffee in his office, which was really, really good. We shared that we were both baristas in our past, and it was delicious. Probably the best coffee I've ever had.
Okay, well, that just sounds like you're trying to get in the good graces of Congressman Frost. But hey,
the man makes a good coffee. Okay,
it did look very good. You didn't offer me a sip, but we can argue about that off mic.
Because you don't drink, you won't have the honey.
Well, that's true. It's not vegan, but there's people probably groaning right now as they just heard that. But I'm sorry. I can only be who I am. Okay, I do want to ask about another aspect of the testimony. So you were the one Democrat and there were 4 Republican witnesses. And you were seated next to a woman from the Heritage Foundation who, by all accounts, was very likely one of the authors of Project 2025. So tell us, what did you do? Did you curse her out? Did you steal her keys? How did you show her who's boss?
That's just not my style. It's just not. No, I shook her hand and we talked a little bit about our kids. She had 6 and kind of what they were doing in school. And then afterwards we talked, I noticed she had a running watch. And so we talked a little bit about just being runners because that's like the universal, we can come together and talk about running. I don't know. That's just kind of my go-to. Like I try to find ways to connect to people, even if I don't agree with a lot of their opinions or, yeah, I don't know. It's a weird, maybe it's a defense mechanism I have. I don't know what it is, but yeah, I don't know. I feel like try to find that humanity in everyone.
Of course, I'm being facetious about this. I never think it's a bad thing to be courteous and professional, and you can still advocate. And in fact, like you might not have lit into her, but the representative from Arizona, Rep. Ansari, really like lit into her, this woman from the Heritage Foundation during her testimony. Folks can watch that. I'll also link to the full testimony if folks want to see it. But you did not get that treatment. You and I prepared a lot of questions about trans students, about DEI and CRT, bathrooms, all that stuff. But you really didn't get grilled.
No, I think they were really focused on, it makes sense. Like they're focused on kind of what they wanted to talk about. And it wouldn't be, yeah. So I was prepared, but I'm sure it'll come in useful some other time.
Do you want me to grill you right here on the podcast? I can ask you some of the tough questions.
Yeah, I'm ready. Just ask me about indoctrination.
Okay.
I'm ready with the 10 Commandments. I'm ready with Prager University. Like, yes, I am worried about indoctrination.
Can you name the 10 Commandments?
Well, I can say that I don't want them on the walls in our classrooms. That's my point.
Fair enough. That's a good answer. Any other sort of thoughts or last takes from giving congressional testimony? I mean, I'm very proud of you. I know a lot of folks who saw you give that testimony were really proud. Hopefully you get another opportunity to give testimony again. Yeah. Any final thoughts about about all that?
I mean, I was just grateful for the opportunity to talk about the great things that are happening in our public schools. I think, especially during COVID, it went from teachers are heroes and our schools are wonderful to all this, these attempts to sow division and distrust and chaos into our public schools. And, I think it's important to show that, public school is a place where 90% of Americans choose to send their children. It's a place where we serve everybody, students with disabilities, English language learners, students from all socioeconomic backgrounds. And just to be able to lift up our schools and, our teachers in them, because, high quality teaching is what's important for students. And I don't know, it was great to have the opportunity to just elevate our public schools and also to really make the, rallying cry that they need funding and that schools cannot continue on the path that they're on. They cannot continue to offer all of the amazing programs that they're offering. They cannot continue to be able to serve students at the level they're serving if they are starved of funding. And when we talk about taxpayer-funded vouchers, that's money that could be invested in our public schools that's being diverted to private corporations.
Okay, so I'm going off topic for a second, which is funny because we're in the part of the show where we go all off topic. But there was actually a piece of press this week about a recurring subject that has come up in this podcast. Is the one of the candidates for the Democratic nomination for the governor here in Florida, David Jolly. David Jolly made some comments that he was, correct me about this phrasing, more open or understanding of school choice, aka taxpayer-funded vouchers. Emma, do you think I'm categorizing that right? A sort of openness to it?
That's sort of what I took from it, yes.
All right, I would love to hear your reaction as a voter who votes in the primary and someone who has a lot to say about taxpayer-funded vouchers.
Honestly, I was really concerned when I saw this. When David Jolly was here in Orlando, he spoke, and we actually had a chance to speak with him after his comments. And he had indicated that he was still kind of figuring out taxpayer-funded vouchers and how he felt about them. He did share that his children were in private school. But I was hopeful that kind of as he maybe educated himself more on what's happening, he would, come out as a strong supporter of public schools, strong supporter of ensuring that we're fully funding them and not kind of funding this, unaccountable, untransparent shadow system. So I would say concerned and disappointed when I saw his comments. And I, as someone who, I can just say as someone who really values this issue, and it is my, one of my top issues, and I will say this, and he indicated that he wanted to work with some people in the legislature on ensuring that our taxpayer-funded voucher schools are more accountable and more transparent. And I support that. But I hope that the Democratic nominee for governor in the state of Florida is someone who takes a very bold and clear position when it comes to ensuring our public taxpayer money is being invested in our public schools, first and foremost, and that we are not diverting money into these private entities.
Well said. Two things. One, David Jolly, come on the podcast. We happy to talk about this, and you can hear our opinions and probably more importantly, Steph's opinion. Number two, Steph, do you think this is your opening to run for governor?
Wow. No, I do not.
Okay. Are you worried about stepping on Jessica Vaughn's territory?
Hey, she called it first, so yeah. guess I'm out.
For folks who don't know, Jessica Vaughn, publicly, school board member, friend of the podcast, we were excited to have her on at some point, mentioned that if she gets removed, which God willing, she does not get removed, but if she gets removed, she would consider a run for governor. But look, I love the idea of a school board member running for governor. So, I don't know. Everything's on the table. It's still just September of 2025. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, I too was disappointed. And, I hope there's more conversation about it. And I hope he continues to listen to voices.
And I just want to be very clear. I am not running for governor, nor am I interested in running for governor. However, there may be someone from Orange County that is interested in running for governor. So let's keep our eyes and ears open.
You sound like you have inside info. Do you have inside info?
I don't think it's inside info.
No. You're just subscribed to some text chains that, are talking about, well, we can say it, Jerry Demings. There's been a lot of talk. We don't have any inside information unless you're not telling me things.
I know nothing.
Okay. Do you think we just need to be more honest and open in our relationship?
What do you mean by open?
With our feelings. Okay. All right. We've gone too off topic.
All right. Bring us back. All right. Has anything else happened this week? I don't know. What happened?
Well, okay. I will tell this story momentarily, but I just want to give you credit for being the queen of transitions. So yes, you were getting ready and I was like, oh, let me go get us some coffee. Of course, I was self-interested in that I needed some caffeine. So I go over to, we're staying in Georgetown. I go over to the Compass Coffee in Georgetown. Maybe there's a number of them. But in any case, I go over to one. I'm getting my coffee, put in your order, my order, and I'm waiting for your almond milk latte.
With half a shot, by the way, of syrup.
With half a shot of vanilla.
We can get to that later.
Yeah, we can talk about that. And then, and there's almost no one else because it's before 7 a.m. There's almost no one else. And then I just kind of look up at who's walking in, and who do I see but RFK Jr. in line to get a cup of coffee at Compass Coffee, and then in the front of Compass Coffee is like 8 security guards, and then when I walked out, I saw like 4 more like standing on the corners. But I was just staring at him because I'm like, holy shit, is that him? And it was, and he kept looking back at me because I was staring at him. And I'm just, we're telling this that it is a funny story, and it was wild, especially because you had asked me the night before how many run-ins with political people I had when I lived in DC. So it was wild to see him, but this is a man who is going to cause a lot of sickness and death with his quackery, and it's wild to see him in person. And, of course, what I want to do is shout at him or, express my opinions. But, I was like, well, maybe now is not the time to, make a scene because I just fear, well, not this was my only fear, but like, you get a call from me like an hour later and it's like, where are you? I'm going to testify in a couple hours. I'm like, well, I've been detained and
I didn't want to bother you.
I didn't want to bother you. And just to be clear, like, certainly not imagining anything violent, but just like, shouting my opinions at him, but still would not have been a good idea. And I don't think would have ended well for me, even though people should have and do have the right to express their opinions or elected officials, even if they don't like it, even if it makes them feel awkward. That's what we're allowed to do.
Wait, are we though?
It's a good question. Well, that brings us to, I think what we really want to talk about today, which is not your almond milk latte with half a pump of vanilla.
I normally never get it. I just get it plain. Only on special occasions do I get like half a pump of vanilla. And so you gave it, so you brought me my coffee. I'm drinking. I'm like, this is so good. What is this? And you're like, well, I did get half a pump. You
deserved it. You did such a great job. But yeah, well, so what we alluded to earlier and what we want to talk about really is the cancellation or, preempting what you want to call it, the pulling of Jimmy Kimmel. I think this is on top of everyone's minds. I think what we're seeing is maybe the clearest moment yet for a lot of folks. If you've been paying attention since January, you've seen this sort of like consolidating of power, intimidating enemies, weaponizing the justice system, et cetera, et cetera. But really by and we'll talk through just a couple of the specifics, but really by using the FCC to intimidate ABC and Nexstar to get Jimmy Kimmel pulled, we're really seeing just such a clear violation of the First Amendment and this administration's authoritarian impulses. Talk to me. What is your reaction seeing all this? You and I talk a lot about the First Amendment. You are such a First Amendment stan, as we might say. How are you feeling seeing this?
I'm very disturbed. I think the First Amendment, the First Amendment is, the First Amendment, the Bill of Rights for a reason. Mm-hmm. I think without it, we can't challenge anything, right? Yeah. Like we can't challenge anything else in our country without it. And so...
Quick question. 10 Commandments versus Bill of Rights. Go.
Wow. Put me on the spot. Not answering that question. No, but I mean, I think the First Amendment is just so critical. And so when I see people silencing other voices, I am concerned. Even if they're silencing people that are saying things I don't like, I think they're icky, I think they're mean, I think they're racist, I think they're hateful, I think they're bigoted. The First Amendment was not written to protect nice, good speech. The First Amendment was written to protect speech you don't like. The First Amendment was written to protect speech the government does not like. Yeah. And so I'm very concerned when I see the government coming in and trying to essentially censor what other people are saying.
Oh, absolutely. And let's just do a quick recap, because I think there's just a couple nuances that I think are worth touching on. So obviously we've been under this real umbrella after Charlie Kirk shooting of trying to squelch speech, both from this administration, right-wing voices, organizations, the state of Florida Against Teachers, we can touch on that part. Just overall tenor of like, don't say anything we don't like about Charlie Kirk. Otherwise, your job or whatever is going to be on the line. We're going to come after you. So that is going on. Jimmy Kimmel on his late night show makes some remarks about Charlie Kirk and MAGA and Donald Trump. Nothing, I think, outrageous at all. And actually, there's reporting that ABC executives didn't think it was very outrageous, but make some comments about the Charlie Kirk shooting and Trump. And then, having seen that, the head of the FCC, Brendan Carr, goes on a right-wing podcast and say, maybe we need to pull some of these affiliates' licenses for airing this kind of speech. And then before we know it, Nexstar, who owns a number of stations and who is attempting to get a merger passed, decides to preempt Jimmy Kimmel, which just means not going to air his show. And then ABC follows up and just says, we're pulling Jimmy Kimmel for now. So I know. So Jimmy Kimmel comments, FCC says, makes a threat, and then these affiliates in ABC pull Kimmel. And now we are in this weird state where I think everyone sees how gross this is. And even folks, everyone from Ben Shapiro to Ted Cruz and Tucker Carlson see what a blatant violation of the First Amendment this is and how dangerous it is. So that's kind of where we are at this moment as we're recording this podcast. I think to what we, have been saying, like, this is upsetting because it is so clear of what an authoritarian move this is. But also I think it is really opening people's eyes. How much hope do I have that like this is going to change everything? Very little at this moment, but I'd rather people recognize it. And I've actually seen some news articles that are saying like actually in headlines from the AP, seeing like authoritarian and using that kind of language. I think that's important that it's being reported that way. But we're in this weird place. So that's my little maybe 5-minute recap. Did I miss anything?
That's an excellent recap, and thank you for recapping it. I know.
I'm sure I did miss something, by the way, but I think that...
Yeah, I think that's a great overview. And, I think it's interesting because what, the FCC could do or what the government could do is they could pass a rule or a law that says you can't talk about X or, don't touch on this subject or don't insult Charlie Kirk. But, obviously it's a clear, that would be a clear violation of the First Amendment. But it would enable people to challenge it. Yeah. And instead what we see happening is they sort of have these whispers behind the scenes, like, you better not do that, or this might not happen, or, we sure don't like that, and we're going to be reviewing this for you, or, in other circumstances, well, that we're in charge of the money, and if we don't like what you decide, you might not get it. And I think it's sort of these, I'm going to use the word subtle, even though it's actually not very subtle, but these... It makes it hard to challenge them. Yeah. And it is sort of forces this like pre-compliance because people are nervous about what might happen. And I think that's even more insidious and even scarier than a horrible law or executive order or rule being created, that at least it's out there and we can challenge it and we see clearly what's happening. Does that make sense? I think that's what concerns me the most about this.
Yeah. Well, do you think as a lawyer, you just want to be in court and just making that lawyer money? Is that part of this? This is their financial self-interest?
No, I think it's about making sure that people, I think it's just about being so transparent about what's happening, and I think when you're sort of subtly saying behind the scenes, like, well, you better comply, because if you don't, it's better for you to comply here than it is. Yeah.
Well, I was just saying, again, this is not behind the scenes. He went on a very popular podcast and said, like, this is what we're thinking of doing. So they're getting less and less subtle about this. As you alluded to earlier, what I think I'll just say, like, we think a lot about what do we want to say in this podcast that, adds value to this conversation. So a question I have for you is, like, tell me about how you're thinking about this in the state of Florida. If you could connect a dot or two of, like, what you've seen as an elected official, and moves from the state board of education and this current national climate.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's similar in that it's these appointed people who, have the ability to make your day-to-day life easier or harder. And, essentially kind of creating this culture of fear where you kind of are supposed to do what they say, or they're just going to make your life harder, or, or even worse than that. And whether it's denying a merger or whether it's, giving you funds for X, Y, or Z, I just think it's this culture of fear where there are threats being made, and it's this expectation that if you don't comply with what we say, you're not going to get what you want. Yeah,
absolutely. And it's interesting. This moment, I think, has been of people capitulating. It has been clarifying being your partner and seeing what you've gone through on the school board and seeing what the state has done. Kind of helps me understand on the national level what is happening, because I think if you're an observer and you're saying, like, why are congressional Democrats not being more aggressive, save for a handful of them? Why are they not being more aggressive? They have more power than they think. And to me, I think about what's happening both here at OCPS and on the, statewide, is people are just scared. Like, people are just scared, and it is in the moment easier to just make yourself smaller and avoid conflict. Even though, and you've said this so many times, you're just ceding your power. You're just giving it away. By not challenging, by not telling folks, like, hey, this is not something you can do. This is not legal. So seeing it on a local level and seeing people who actually have power to, not join an appeal with the state of Florida, and then seeing congressional Democrats support a resolution to honor Charlie Kirk's memory. And your brain is just, if you're me, and I think many other folks, you're like, what the fuck is happening? Just stand up for what's right. But people just do not want conflict. And I think when we think about electing Democrats or anyone else, but I think this is we're talking about Democrats today. We think about what are their policies? Like, what do they believe in? What are they going to advocate for? But one thing we don't think a lot about when people are campaigning or running for is, like, are they actually going to stand up when, times are tough or when it's scary? And I think what we're seeing is, like, there's a lot of elected officials who might believe the right things or stand for the right things, but when push comes to shove, they're just going to turtle or avoid conflict in any way. And I think for a voter, you're just like, that's not what I voted for. I voted for you to stand up and put yourself out there and put yourself, to have a little bit of risk. And I'm so proud of you, because you're constantly, much to the chagrin of a lot of folks, certainly not of me and certainly not of most of your voters, but a lot of folks don't like how outspoken you are, don't like the fact that you've stood up the way you've stood up. And I don't know, it's just really, it's upsetting and disappointing on the local level. It's upsetting and disappointing on the national level. But people have more power than they think they do. And especially elected officials have more power than they think they do. They just need to exercise it and speak up and stand their ground. And this is such a big part of why people don't respect Democrats and this party just has such a low approval rating, is people are like, well, you don't stand up for anything. So, like, why would I like you? Why would I believe in you?
Yeah, well, and I think when you say elected officials have more power than they think they do, conversely, I think some of these appointed officials or appointed people have less power than they think they do. But by acting in the way we are acting, we are suggesting that they actually do have that power. And I think actions speak louder than words. And then people start to think, oh, well, maybe they actually do have the power to say this, or they do have the power to remove you for this, or they do have the power to control this. And I think that is really dangerous because we're, like you said, we're ceding power. We're acting like what they're doing is acceptable and what they're doing is lawful. And I think that is what's really scary. And I will also say for elected officials, I do, people are in they represent different constituencies. And we were, in fact, just talking to a school board member in a different county in this state who was sharing that, she was asking people in her constituency, well, how would you want me to vote on this? And understand if I vote in this way, I may be a target of the state and there's a chance I could be removed. And she was sharing that a lot of her constituents kind of understood that and said, we don't want you to be removed. And so do what you need to do. But I do think it puts us in a dangerous situation of then acting like we're sort of all in agreement and what's happening is okay. And this extra lawful overreach of power that's how it builds and that's how it continues. I don't envy anyone in these tough situations though. I mean, it's a tough situation to be in for sure. I
mean, these people who are in charge at the moment are really contemptible. And of course they deserve the lion's share of our ire. However, it hits a certain part of your brain when the people who should be defending you and are in a better position to fight than you are don't choose to do so. And maybe they have I'm not saying there aren't good, valid reasons to do it. But when you are, you have an elected official or see elected officials across the state or across the country who are not standing up, it is maddening. And it compounds the fear and distraught feeling you have about the times we're in. Because I think it's a twofold thing. We are in this moment where authoritarianism and Trump is on the rise, and elite institutions, organizations, corporations, and elected officials who could stop this just are choosing not to out of fear of their own status, out of fear for money, protecting, their interests. I mean, you see, like, just as an example, like someone like Tim Cook, not that I have some reverence for the head of Apple, but like you see him kissing Trump's ass. It's like, can we just get like one powerful CEO who like wants to take on this administration? A lot of what we have heard and read about what makes resistance to an authoritarian regime successful. And you do have to have the business class as well, at least parts of it, to be part of that resistance. We're also not seeing enough of that. So I think, everyone is just too fucking scared and too fucking timid. And the people who are the most vulnerable, the immigrants, teachers, et cetera, the LGBTQ community are paying the price because people who could be doing more to stand up aren't doing it.
Yeah, I want to echo that. I really do think it's important that we have business leaders standing up because I think to some degree when this just falls into politicians' hands, it's really easy to say, oh, they're just going to repeat the party line or they're just saying what they're supposed to say. They're just, so I think it is really, really important that we're having other groups stand up. And I do feel like that's something that we haven't seen. And I think that is something that could help to pull some people over and really make them understand, like, no, this is not normal. Like if ABC were to say, no, absolutely not. We believe in the First Amendment. People can say things that you don't agree with on the air, and that's literally exactly what the First Amendment protects. If they had stood up and said that, I just feel like that would have been so much more powerful. And, we have years and years of Supreme Court cases these are exactly the things. Political speech is the speech that is most protected under the First Amendment. Going back to Cohen and fuck the draft and Johnson and flag burning. I mean, these are things that we might not agree with. They are things that we may find disturbing and insulting and disrespectful. But they are the very, symbolic, political speech that the First Amendment is designed to protect. So.
Here. I'm worried they're going after the Jimmy Kimmels and Stephen Colberts of the world, but it's only a matter of time before they come to the improv theaters and start telling us what suggestions we can and cannot take and what scenes we can and cannot do. Of course, I'm being somewhat facetious, but I don't know. Someone could come to an improv show and be like, so they did a scene that made fun of Trump. Shut this theater down,
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting. It's just thinking about you as a comedian, as a performer. I feel like this must hit you a little bit, and actually as a creative producer, like this just must hit you differently, and I think maybe a little bit more personally than the average person.
Well, I think I definitely do not do comedy on the level that Jimmy Kimmel does. I just perform in little theaters, but I mean, not like little tiny baby dollhouse size theaters, but like
in the rehearsal.
No, but I think comedians are often the first people to call out bullshit and hypocrisy, and that's why they are often the most targeted by authoritarians, because they'll just call bullshit and able to cut through the lies that these people spew. And it reminds me of Zelensky, the head of Ukraine, former comedian. It's like, I think comedians do have a special knack for cutting through and understanding the evils of society and the hypocrisy of society, and that makes them dangerous to people like Trump. And I mean, like, I was going back and I was being a little joking about it a little bit, but like, I would not be surprised that we go down to a world in which, like, to go back to my earlier example, someone's in a theater or someone says something that is against Ron DeSantis, and all of a sudden that theater has their liquor license pulled. I mean, I just think that is like completely in the realm of possibility
for sure.
of where we could be heading down. Yeah. And I'm really just thinking about that example, in this moment, but that could happen. And that would be, and then the owners of the theater are like, we can't do any scenes about Trump. We can't do scenes about DeSantis, whatever. That could absolutely happen.
Which is literally what has happened in Florida classrooms. They passed this slew of laws, and we against the LGBTQ community. What can we say? What can't we say? And then you over censor, you self censor because you're afraid that you might come close to violating the law. But going back to comedians, it just seems wild that our administration is going after comedians. Do you know what I mean? I mean, like, what thin skin do they have?
Well, that's the whole thing. I mean, always every accusation is a confession. They love to hurl this term snowflake at liberal folks. But they, of course, are the ultimate snowflakes. Trump, just in the last few days, has been berating reporters who have challenged him or say not very nice things. I mean, he's talked about, stations and news organizations shouldn't be able to say like 90%. I forget the exact percentage, but some like 90% of bad things about the administration. They shouldn't be allowed to do that. Like, these people just like cannot take criticism. They can't. It upsets them to see representations of different kind of people. Cough, cough. The painting over of the Pulse Memorial crosswalk and all other street art. I mean, they don't like people who think differently, who think creatively, who are willing to challenge the status quo. So it's all in a line. Like, all those dots connect. That's what is going on right now.
Yeah, and I think it's worth pointing out that the Trump has sued several media outlets over the course of the last couple of years for defamation and libel.
He just sued the New York Times, and I think that was like immediately thrown out.
So I think a couple have been thrown out or dismissed, and then a couple of them, I don't think the court has found in favor of Trump in any of them. If I'm wrong, someone email me. But I know a couple of the larger ones have settled with Trump. And I don't think it's a reflection. I don't think it's because of their reflection that they've done something wrong. I think, again, going back to what we talked about earlier, it's let's just be done with this. Let's get over it. Well, let's just pay $15 million.
Let's just pull the books.
Right. And nice. And let's just move on and be able to do what we want. And so, again, there's coercion there, right? Like if you are, even if you know that you're going to win, but you might have to now, okay, it's 15 million here, it's 50 million there. What's it next? Like that's coercion.
What if we want to do a merger later? What if we have business in front of the government?
Right. And so, even though there's really no basis to his lawsuits, he's still kind of getting what he wants.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Okay. I think we have understandably and rightfully talked about how terrible this is. What do you think going forward? What can we do? That's always the question, but it's always worth repeating the question. And because I don't want folks to leave this because I do think this podcast has hope. I don't want folks to leave this podcast feeling like, well, we're totally fucked. And like, don't get me wrong, we are kind of fucked in a lot of ways, but not completely. So when you think about like, what do we need to be doing in this moment? What comes to your mind?
I just think it's making your voices heard, and don't think that you don't have something to say, right? Like don't give away your power preemptively either. So if that means, writing letters to the editor for some people, for others, maybe it's showing up at your county meetings or your city meetings or your school board meetings and saying, you know what, we do care about this. We do care about books. We do care about free speech rights of our students and of our teachers. I think that elected officials need to hear what you think, because if they don't hear anything, all they hear are the threats, the intimidation. So they need to hear from you.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I think, who knows if and when this tide will turn. It will be because millions and millions of people made their voices heard because this administration was unpopular enough that we were able to like push them back. And like, quick aside, love an aside, like look at Governor J.B. Pritzker in Illinois. Trump said he was going to go into Chicago, and Pritzker was essentially like, no fucking way, this isn't happening. Stood up to him, and guess what? The Trump administration didn't go into Chicago.
And actually pointed to the law that says, no, unless I do this, you're not coming. So, yeah. So,
which is, a beacon of light that like you can stand up and you can push back against them. So, yes and to everything you said. And there's a No Kings protest on October 18th. I know I'll be showing up. If I don't know what your schedule is like that day, Steph, I'd love for you to come with me.
Well, we talked about this. I'm going. Okay, no, I love how you're like, I'm showing up. I don't know about you.
Well, I didn't want to commit you. And then
calling me out.
No. And then like people are like, where's Steph? She said she was coming. And I'm like, maybe you had, I don't know.
Wow.
Okay. Wow. All right. We'll talk about this off mic. But no, people should go to a No Kings protest. I think being seen, having community with people who know what's going on and understand how fucked up this is, and so the opposition can see how many people are against them, and folks who are on our side for free speech who are against authoritarianism and fascism feel buoyed by that. So yeah, make your voice heard, to the extent that you can, put your body out there. I'm not saying anyone needs to be pepper sprayed, but if that's something that you feel like you need to do, Google how to protect your eyes.
Oh wow, this is getting scary. And I just want to say also, when it comes to free speech, I also think it's important because I think First Amendment is something that is important across the political spectrum, regardless of what party you belong to. And, I would just remind people that, because I've heard both sides use the First Amendment to sort of buoy their positions. Yeah. And I think it's really important to remember, if you believe in the First Amendment and you believe in free speech, you believe in speech you don't like coming to places that, you may not want them to be. But that's what it means to support the First Amendment. And I think that crosses over to both Democrats and Republicans and independents and no party. I think it's just really important to think about that too. And then I also want to say that, yes, do the protest. Yes, write the letters. Yes, speak at your meetings, but also make sure you are registered to vote.
Yes.
And then actually vote.
Yes.
That is the most important thing.
And in 2028, vote for Stephanie Vanos for re-election for the school board.
Wait, I haven't filed yet, so I don't know if that's legal.
Okay.
Someone might come after me.
Okay. Well, you're going to get your liquor license pulled. Okay. So did you make a decision, 10 Commandments versus Bill of Rights? Or was
Not answering.
Okay, not answering. Okay, well, how does it feel to do another podcast, just you and me? We didn't have a guest today. We had to really lock in just the two of us.
I like being locked in. I'm going to be transparent and say this is our second take at the pod, and I think that's okay.
Yeah, that's okay.
You got to bring the right energy, and I feel like if you're not feeling the right energy, you got to start over.
Yeah. Did you think I wasn't bringing it the first time around?
No, I felt like I wasn't bringing it the first time around. No, you're always excellent.
No, you were perfect. I was a big failure.
No, I was like, wait, let's start going through First Amendment case law, and then about 3 minutes into that, I'm like, nobody wants to hear about First Amendment case law.
If you want more about First Amendment case law, email us at podcastextracurricular@gmail.com. Those emails do get forwarded to me, and I check the inbox. I feel like you were calling me out a little bit at the beginning of the pod. Those emails are checked.
Are you going to answer the First Amendment questions?
Yes, of course.
Perfect. Okay, do it. I love it. Thank you for talking today. This was fun. This
was a lot of fun. Thank you for talking to me. And I think for folks out there, these are tough times. But you are not alone. And maybe not literally, Steph and I aren't going to come over to your house unless you invite us. podcastextracurricular@gmail.com.
We are mobile.
I'm excited about our show next week. We don't usually preview shows in the future, but do you want to talk for just 30 seconds maybe about next week's show?
Yeah, so Second Harvest is doing a 24-hour event. It's the local food bank here, and they invited us to come participate in it and talk a little bit about food insecurity in Central Florida and what it means for not just our community, but also for our students and for our children.
I love it. We're so grateful they invited us. Very excited for that. And I love any chance I get to talk about food, so it's great.
French toast or oatmeal?
Depends on how I'm feeling.
Okay.
All right. Thank you so much for listening. And thanks, Steph, for being on the pod.
Thank you. Have a great week.
Bye.